somewhere, and they can establish these bot networks, and they can just simply rent these bot networks out, and people will buy them. They will buy time on these networks, and they're making a ton of money just doing that. So when you hook that computer up naked to the internet because you just got a really cool fancy cable modem, yeah, you're part of a bot network. You didn't know it. It's very, very likely within less than 2 minutes. Very, very, very probably. So as the exploits become more available, as the scripts become more available, the numbers of attempts go up. So you would think the number of successes might also go up. However, like I said, you don't necessarily have to be smart to be a, quote, hacker, right? But what happens is those exploits and those repeated attempts become very predictable. So a patch fixes that. And if you apply that patch, or you keep that policy on the firewall that stops that, it's very unlikely that a mutant form of that attack is going to get through. So the number of it's a constant battle, right? So for every technology that they develop, somebody else is going to develop something that circumvents it, right? So there's a radar gun, right? So there's a radar detector. Ooh, yeah, okay, we got by that one. Now there's a radar detector, right? And there are radar detectors, right? So where does it end, right? There's constantly this evolution of that's simply born out of necessity, right? We were talking earlier about file sharing networks, right? The Napsters of the world. Well, you can't do that. Great. So we'll open source the whole thing, and we'll call it a peer-to-peer network. So now you can go out, and I would imagine everybody in this room probably has done that at some point, right? So what's going to happen when they stop that? And they will. They'll stop it. No open, peer-to-peer networks because you're still, the intellectual property question. So what happens then? Then somebody saves a piece of a song, and you got a piece of it here, and a piece of it there, and a piece of it here, and a piece of it there. I don't own the whole thing. You can't come get me for that. Point is, that was actually a very good illustration that came up with earlier. Point is that no matter what the exploit, the necessity, right, is the mother of all invention, and there will be something else that comes up for that. So, I don't know. Did I dance around that enough to not actually answer your question? Yes. Okay. Yeah, I think organized crime is probably the number one type of exploit that we're seeing right now.
Is that a very large percentage of the exploits?
Yeah. Well, it comes back to, and there's a whole other conversation again if they ever decide they want to have me back, the blended threat, slow and go attacks. That unless you are constantly watching, and I'm trying not to get into a pitch for a managed security provider, which I am here, but unless you're constantly watching, unless you have an enterprise-wide security event monitoring and management system that looks for these kinds of things, looks for these blended types of attacks, it's nearly impossible to detect them. Because what I want to do is I want to find, if somebody is sending, this Metasploit thing here that I was illustrating to you, it's like if somebody is trying that, then I know the contents of that Metasploit. There's a bind, there's a shell, right? There's, this IIS exploit in there, right? There's 4 or 5 different payloads in there. So if I see this, then I want to also look for those things. Your firewall doesn't do that. Your firewall just stops stuff, right? So it's blended threats. Scanning networks and looking for things, except only doing a certain portion once every other hour. Your IDS is not going to pick up a slow and go attack because you simply don't have the ability in most systems. Where's the camera? Some do. Most systems don't have the ability to store the amount of data that it takes to be able to identify that, because some of those attacks may take as much as 30, 60 days. A lot of companies don't keep their log files for that long. To keep the log file, put that information in a place where you can see it and constantly look through it for patterns. What do I see here? I see a source attack coming from this location. Then you don't see it again for a couple of days. The little blinky light didn't go off, did it? It shows up again. Is twice a pattern? Right? Probably not. Third time? Probably. Fourth time? Now we need to go ahead and take action to see if we are correctly, have the correct controls in place for that. Sir?
In the Eastern Bloc, don't they have like teams of hackers across countries doing footprinting?
In the what?
In the Eastern Bloc countries, former
that's where most of it's coming from.
Right.
What was the name of the one I just we came across? Shadow something. I can't remember the name of it right now. But there's been 4 or 5 of them that have been brought down, and as many as 300 arrests. And those were the mid-tier guys. The large guys are just, I can't even fathom what they're going to be capable of. And a lot of times they're not after millions of dollars in transactions. They're after millions of dollar transactions. It's the same amount of money, right? If everything's automated, what difference does it make? And if the laws and the controls and things aren't in place, especially international, to be able to take those things across seas and extradition and everything else, there's little to no risk. Why not? Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Yes, you're exactly right. That's where we're seeing a lot of those kind of things come from. Also, it comes from a lot of the Asian countries because of the lack of extradition and cooperation with the governments.
Right, but what I was getting at was you were talking about sources of attacks.
Mm-hmm.
When they're footprinting target systems, they're doing it from like all across geographical locations, and so have various subnet return addresses and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to see, right?
Yeah, botnets are everywhere. And interesting, a lot of the way these things get created. Microsoft went to this patching on incremental patching, right? Instead of, here's an exploit, we're going to send you out a patch. And a couple days or weeks later, here's an exploit here we found, so we're going to send you out another patch. All right, they went to one Wednesday a month or whatever the time is. I don't remember what it is now, but they send you a monthly patch. Well, what's happening is these patches are getting reverse engineered to figure out what's in the patch. What exactly am I fixing here? So when that patch comes out, I take that back to my lab and I figure out, well, that's fixing this vulnerability and it's fixing that vulnerability and it's fixing this vulnerability, and I have scripts for 5 out of 10 of these. So I'll launch a script, and because that patch just came out, how long does it take a company to implement a patch? Tell me you're going to take, if you have 10,000 users in your network, tell me you're going to take that patch from Microsoft and go, Microsoft coder guys are so good, I know I'm going to throw this patch on my network and not have any problems. Right? Yeah, I don't think so. Right? There's going to be a process. Yeah, well, now you're getting the Unisys screensaver. Thanks for my IT guys. But there's going to be a process in place for that. There's going to be an examination of the patch. There's going to be a staging area for the patch. There's going to be testing of the patch. There's going to be a pilot implementation of the patch, and then there's going to be a corporate-wide rollout. Now, tell me 4 or 5 of these hacker guys can go down to the basement with the metal shelves and the swinging light bulb, and it's going to take them more time to be able to reverse engineer this thing and launch exploits to take advantage of these systems. That's how a lot of these things get created. Microsoft is enabling by doing their patches that way.
So is the better alternative doing whenever you find them, release them right away, or what's the better alternative?
Not making them generally available to the public would help. Which brings up another issue. We have in the IT security space, we have almost